Imagine working tirelessly for 20 years, only to come home and find a heartbreaking surprise waiting for you. What would you do? In today's story, one man faced betrayal, heartbreak, and impossible choices, but the wisdom of three simple pieces of advice changed his life forever. Stick with us to uncover how his journey took a twist that no one could have expected, and how it might inspire you to rethink your own path. Oh, and wait until you see what he found inside a loaf of bread. It's not what you think. Long ago, on the humble outskirts of a small village, there lived a young couple, newly married and bound together by love, though their lives were shaped by scarcity. One day, moved by the yearning to provide his wife with a better life, the husband made a heartfelt proposal. "My love," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion, "I have made a decision. I will set out on a journey to find work and secure a more prosperous and dignified future for us. I cannot say how long I'll be gone, but I ask one thing. During my absence, stay faithful, as I will remain faithful to you." Fueled by youthful energy and unshakable hope, the young man journeyed for days, traversing long and tiring distances on foot. Fortune finally smiled on him when he came across a farmer who needed help managing his sprawling property. Seizing the opportunity, he eagerly offered his labor, and the farmer, impressed by the young man's sincerity, accepted. With unwavering confidence in his own work ethic, the young man suggested a bold agreement. "Let me work for as long as you see fit. When the time comes for me to leave, release me from my duties. I don't want my wages now. Save them for me in a savings account. When I depart, give me the full amount, along with the profits it's earned." The farmer, intrigued by this unusual proposition, agreed. True to his word, the young man worked tirelessly for 2 decades, pouring every ounce of strength into his duties. At the end of this long period, he approached the farmer, ready to claim his reward. But instead of a simple payment, the farmer presented him with a curious offer. "I'll honor our agreement," the farmer began, "but before I do, I want to propose an alternative. I can give you all the money you've earned, and you can go on your way. Or I can give you 3 pieces of advice instead. But if you choose this, you'll forfeit the money." He leaned back, studying the young man's reaction. "Take some time to reflect on these options. When you've made your decision, let me know." The man spent 2 days in deep thought, weighing the value of gold against the wisdom promised by the farmer. Finally, with conviction, he approached his employer. "I've made my choice. I will take the 3 pieces of advice," he declared. The farmer nodded solemnly, as if testing his resolve one last time. "Very well, but remember, this means you will leave with no money." With that, the farmer shared the 3 pieces of advice, their weight far greater than the man had anticipated. Before sending him off, the farmer handed him 3 loaves of bread. "2 are for your journey," he explained, "and the 3rd is for your wife. Share it with her when you return home." After 20 long years, the now older man set out on the road back to the life and love he had left behind. On the first day of his journey, a stranger greeted him, curiosity lighting up their face. "Where are you headed?" the passerby asked. "I'm heading to a distant place, more than 20 days' journey along this road," the man replied. The stranger nodded thoughtfully, then leaned closer. "If that's the case, let me tell you about a shortcut. It could save you days of travel." The man's heart leapt at the prospect of an easier journey. He was about to follow the new path when the first piece of advice resurfaced in his mind. Never take shortcuts in life, for unknown paths may cost you dearly. The words settled heavily in his chest, and after a moment of hesitation, he shook his head and chose to stay on the original route. 2 days later, he encountered another traveler who shared troubling news. "You won't believe this," the man said, lowering his voice. "Someone tried that shortcut recently and fell victim to a brutal attack. They were robbed, beaten, and left with nothing." The older man tightened his grip on the straps of his bag, gratitude filling him for the wisdom he had chosen to follow. It turned out the seemingly convenient shortcut was a deadly trap. The first piece of advice had proven its worth entirely. After several more days of exhausting travel, the man's body ached for rest. Late one night, he came across a roadside inn, its lantern dimly flickering in the darkness. Though the hour was late and the world seemed quiet, a woman with a stern expression answered the door. Without much conversation, she showed him to a modest room. Grateful for shelter, the man paid the fee, took a rejuvenating bath, and collapsed onto the bed. But the calm of the night shattered when a blood-curdling scream pierced the silence, jolting him awake. His heart raced as he scrambled to his feet, instincts urging him to find the source of the terror. He had just reached the door when the second piece of advice came flooding back. Never let curiosity lead you toward evil, for curiosity about darkness can be fatal. The words stilled him. For a long moment, he stood frozen, the scream echoing in his ears. Slowly, he stepped back from the door, his resolve stronger than his fear, and lay back down, forcing himself to ignore the haunting sound. As dawn broke, light poured through the cracks of the window, promising the clarity of a new day. At breakfast, the innkeeper approached him, a curious glint in his eyes. "Did you hear the scream last night?" he asked, his tone casual but probing. The man nodded, setting his cup of tea down carefully. "I did," he admitted. The innkeeper leaned in slightly. "And? Weren't you curious to find out what it was?" The traveler shook his head firmly, though the memory of the haunting cry still lingered. "No," he replied. "Curiosity can lead to danger. I chose to stay in my room." A knowing smile spread across the innkeeper's face. "Wise choice," he said, his voice lowering. "Many don't resist the urge. Few who step into the darkness of that hallway ever return." The man's stomach tightened, but he said nothing more, only grateful that the second piece of advice had steered him away from whatever evil had lurked in the shadows that night. The innkeeper, surprised by the man's restraint, shared a chilling revelation. "You were lucky," he said gravely. "This inn is haunted by a woman plagued with madness. Her screams are lures, and any guest foolish enough to investigate never comes back. She kills them." The traveler felt a cold shiver run down his spine, but he offered a quiet thanks for the second piece of advice that had saved his life. With a renewed sense of purpose, he resumed his journey, each step fueled by the growing anticipation of returning home to his wife. After many long days and nights, the sun began to dip behind the horizon when he spotted smoke curling from the chimney of his modest home, nestled between the trees. His heart swelled with emotion as he drew closer. There, in the fading light, he saw her, his wife, tending to the garden. But something stopped him in his tracks. She wasn't alone. A man sat beside her, resting comfortably as she ran her fingers gently through his hair. The sight sent a wave of anguish and jealousy crashing over him. Betrayal stung his chest, and without thinking, he surged forward, ready to confront them and unleash his rage. But then, like a beacon in the storm of his emotions, the third piece of advice came to him. Never make decisions in moments of anger and pain, for regret may follow too late. His steps faltered, and he stopped in his tracks, his heart pounding. For what felt like an eternity, he stood there, torn between fury and the wisdom that urged caution. Finally, he turned away, deciding to spend the night under the stars. He promised himself that, come morning, after a night's rest and clearer thoughts, he would make his decision. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, he awoke from hours of deep introspection, his heart steadier and his mind clearer. Resolute, the man made a decision. "I will not confront my wife or the man. Instead, I'll return to the farmer and ask to be reinstated. But before I leave, I owe my wife an explanation. I must tell her that I have always been faithful to her." With determination, he approached the door of his small house and called out. When his wife opened the door and saw him, her eyes filled with disbelief. In an instant, she threw herself into his arms, hugging him tightly. He tried to pull away, but her embrace was unyielding. Tears welled in his eyes as he finally spoke. "I've always been loyal to you, but you've betrayed me." Her face paled, her expression a mixture of shock and sorrow. "Never," she said, her voice trembling. "Never have I betrayed you. I waited for you for 20 long years." Confused and overwhelmed, he pressed on. Then who was the man you were with yesterday? I saw you in the garden, caressing his hair. Her gaze softened as tears rolled down her cheeks. With tenderness, she took his hands in hers. That man is our son. When you left, I discovered I was pregnant. He's 20 years old now. The man staggered, overcome by the revelation. His heart, heavy with regret for his earlier suspicions, now swelled with an indescribable mix of sorrow and joy. He stepped inside the home that had once been his and embraced his son for the first time. Overwhelmed with emotion, he shared the story of his journey, his struggles, the lessons he had learned, and the sacrifices he had made. As his wife lovingly prepared dinner, the three of them sat together, savoring the moment that had been 20 years in the making. With tears in his eyes, he took the last loaf of bread the farmer had given him. "This is for you," he said, handing it to his wife. They decided to break it together as a family. As the knife sliced through the crust, the man paused. Something felt unusual. The bread was far too heavy. Carefully, they opened it and gasped in amazement. Hidden within were 3 small bars of gold, 10 sparkling diamonds, and 2 brilliant rubies. The man's eyes filled with gratitude and awe. This treasure, the reward for his 2 decades of dedication and labor, had come not just as material wealth, but as a testament to the wisdom he had carried with him on his journey. As they shared their meal and reflected on the miracle of their reunion, the man thought of the lessons he had learned: to avoid shortcuts, to resist the pull of curiosity toward evil, and to pause before acting in anger. These lessons had shaped his path and led him back to his family, his faith stronger than ever. Proverbs 19 verse 20, he whispered, the words resonating deeply. Listen to advice and accept instruction, so you may gain wisdom in the future. If this story has touched your heart, please share it with your friends and subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment sharing your experiences, moments that have shaped your life, or lessons you've learned. Let us know your stories. We'd love to hear them. May God bless you, and we hope to see you in the next video.